believe what was just said, which is we need to be disciplined about this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kaptur, and then Mr. Womack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Dempsey, thank you for your service to our country, and Secretary Carter, thank you so very much for your service as well. I'll just ask my questions, and then I'd appreciate your response. First, General Dempsey, you refer in your statement to heavyweights, middleweights, and other weights. And in terms of the heavyweights in Russia being at the top of the list, in the event of movement by Russia deeper into Eastern and Central Europe, who's responsible for the command of joint forces in that instance? Last year, Congress directed $75 million through the European Reassurance Initiative for programs, activities, and assistance to support the government of Ukraine. It is my understanding that none of those funds have been obligated thus far. Could you please explain the status of that funding, the reason for the delay, and how this assistance will be provided moving forward? And is the European Reassurance Initiative the primary mechanism, or is there other funding as well? Then my second arena of questioning deals with ISIS. As I observe the ongoing battle in Tikrit, how do we beat ISIS without defaulting into an alignment with the Shia and Iran? It seems to be a most combustible situation, not just militarily, but politically.
Thank you, Congresswoman. The C2, Command and Control of NATO forces resides with General Phil Breedlove, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, who's dual-hatted as the European Command Commander. And in the event of an Article 5 issue with regard to whatever it happens to be, he would have control of U.S. forces, and he would also have responsibility for coordinating our activities with NATO.
What has happened to the $75 million through this?
So the European, first of all, we appreciate that. And what we've been doing is working with our European partners on the menu of reassurance activities, the growth of a very high readiness task force, additional equipment, pre-positioning, all of which takes collaboration and coordination with our European allies. I want to make sure you know that we haven't been idle in the interim. What the
you mentioned NATO very prominently in your testimony.
Absolutely, because I think anything we do in Europe should be by, with, and through NATO, because that's the foundation of NATO's purpose. But anyway, the services have been cash flowing from their account activities that they're doing. We've got soldiers in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia right now, in Poland. Services are cash flowing it. We're catching up with it using the European Reassurance Initiative. So I assure you we have, although you may not see on the books that this money is being committed, but it will be committed.
I'll tell you, I'm befuddled by the fact that, for example, in the area of telecommunications, the Ukrainians are completely underserved. It is, I frankly don't understand it. And you would think that, you know, at least you ought to give them a fighting chance. And so I just see that particular, in the advance of Russia in many ways, setting up within some of our NATO allies' countries new internet and radio sites in the native language, Russia, and a obvious aggressive move in that part of the world in telecommunications and other ways. I see us as very, and I understand the danger of this, but it just seems to me we could be a little more directed. And I know General Breedlove is coming up here, I think, Mr. Chairman.
He is, yeah, and
right.
I share your sentiments. We should be giving non-NATO allies support to Ukraine. I've written the President 3 times. Yes. We don't get any answers back, but we need some activity in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Shia and Iran, could someone address that? How do we beat ISIS without aligning with the Shia and Iran, which appears to be happening certainly in the Tikrit operation?
Well, if I could, Congressman, by the way, I think we spoke past each other in the last question. I was talking about NATO and Article 5. You were actually focused on Ukraine. We have given $100 million in non-lethal assistance. We're in active discussion right now about training non-lethal and the possibility of lethal aid, and that's an active conversation ongoing right now inside of the interagency. Shia, the real key to defeat ISIL is actually convincing the Sunni that they should not embrace this group because they have a future in Iraq. And we're actively working, our diplomats over there, General Allen, Brett McGurk, Ambassador McGurk, are working to ensure that the governance piece of this in Iraq is progressing as rapidly as the military piece of it. Because
General, if I could just insert, going to Crete, which is a Sunni tribal homeland, right, with Iranian forces and Iranian generals, is going to send a message that's going to create deep political problems, don't you think?
It could. Right now, the Sunni members of parliament and the local tribal leaders, the mayor of Tikrit, are all supportive of this because they want to rid the terrain of ISIL. You're exactly right, though. We're watching carefully, and if this becomes an excuse to ethnic cleanse, then our campaign has a problem, and we're going to have to make a campaign adjustment.
I wanted to just finally say, Mr. Chairman, as I view that part of the world, people on the ground are afraid to commit. I heard what you said, Mr. Secretary, about Afghanistan and changing people going to ISIL as opposed to Taliban and so forth. They go to the strongest force. And so if X force is the strongest, those young men will go there. At least that's my experience. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I'm very concerned about what's happening.
Thank you, Ms. Kaptur. Mr. Womack.
Thank you.